first of all, we are recording this to the cloud, so this will be made available at a later date. Second thing would be live captioning is available. You should see the closed caption option in your Zoom interface if the live captions are not already visible. Okay, thanks. I'll turn it over to you, John.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm sorry. It's been a morning full of meetings, and so I hope that you're all having a great day. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to just jump on in here and start going through information. My name is John Haddad. I'm the product manager for the Multiple Measures Placement Service. I've been with the Tech Center since 2015. And have been engaged with working on the development efforts for the Multiple Measures Placement Service since early in 2018 is when we started the initial proof of concept for enabling the data pipes. I'm from Colorado. Some information about me: I live in Phoenix, so I work very remotely from the California Community College system. But I love California. I've been very fortunate to get a chance to spend a lot of time in the field. Maybe not super recently, but over the years with my engagement with the Tech Center, I have certainly been fortunate to get to know quite a few folks from the field, and have really enjoyed my experience with working with everybody. Before we just to kind of give you an overview and an idea of what we're going to be going through today, at a high level, we're going to be giving you an opportunity to get an understanding of how MMPS, how it works, and delivers placement recommendations and recommended level of support to your colleges. We'll talk a little bit about the implementation requirements, the technical requirements that are necessary to make the data available for use for your college. We're going to go through some frequently asked questions about features and benefits of the MMPS, as well as give you all an opportunity to ask some questions, and then wrapping up with talking about next steps. But before I get to that, I want to take an opportunity. So AB 705 is definitely one of those legislations and initiatives that have had a tremendous amount of impact on the system. And there has, in line with that, there has been a tremendous level of effort to get the entire system to where we are, where we're months away from basically being meeting the required implementation for English and math for AB 705. And so I just want to give everybody that's on the call, whether you've been with the your local AB 705 implementation team from the day one, or whether this is your first meeting that you've ever attended about AB 705, I want to give acknowledgement to the collective effort throughout the system, because there has been a tremendous amount of hours. There's been a tremendous number of hours that have been collectively put forth towards aligning curriculum to AB 705, creating the support courseworks, doing just a lot of instructional changes to make sure that everything is going well to support students getting through transfer level English and math. And I've been fortunate to have been at the last couple of AB 705 workshops that the RP group and ERP and AB 705 committee have been hosting throughout the state. And I can tell you that based on those workshops alone, that there has been a tremendous amount of effort. So just a round of applause to those collective efforts and helping us get to where we are today. So Multiple Measures Placement Services has been developed in collaboration with the Chancellor's Office and the AB 705 Advisory Committee. We have a lot of development partners. So we have a lot of organizations that have been engaged together as development partners in building out the service, understanding everything that is going into making AB 705 work. And we have representation from those organizations. So I believe that there is somebody that is online from California College Guidance Initiative, as I know that John Hett is online from ERP. And so if you have any questions specifically about CCGI and ERP and the value that they bring to the solution as well as to the system in general, please don't, please ask those questions in chat or save those questions towards the end. We'll make sure that we get to give everybody an opportunity to answer those questions. Okay. So the multiple measures placement service is essentially facilitates the data delivery of the recommended level of support and placement recommendations for higher level math in 3 easy steps. Step 1 is that we go out and we attempt to collect all of the available high school transcript information that we would have for an individual student. Once we've pulled that information together, the second step is to actually generate the recommended placement and level of support for each student. And then finally, we deliver that placement information to the colleges via an architecture and infrastructure that enables for delivery directly to the college SIS. To dig into each one of these steps in a little bit more detail, the first step of collecting transcript data, it starts off with the submission of an application on CCC Apply. That is the business event that triggers all of the downstream processes for MMPS. And we currently have access to 3 different sources of high school transcript information. The California College Guidance Initiative is one of the verified sources of transcript data that we have. And then CalPass Plus is the second integrated source of verified transcript data that we have. And finally, we have the self-reported data that students are providing directly inside of the application. A future source of verified high school transcript information is the CalPads repository. It's part of the Department of Education. So the Chancellor's Office and the Community College System and the Department of Education just recently executed a new memorandum of understanding that facilitates some data sharing. We're still working through the initial evaluation of exactly what can be shared and with whom that information can be shared, but that is future development efforts will allow us to get access to what should be a much more comprehensive set of high school transcript data for California high school students. So that is something that is future development. Once we've got all of that data collected and in a single repository, we go through the process of generating placements. And so we're selecting a prioritized data set. And what that looks like is we are using, when CCGI has data available for a student, that is going to be the preferred source of data that we would use for placement. And one of the big driving factors for that being a highly attractive data set is the fact that CCGI's data is updated on a regular basis. Their high schools, their partner high school districts are not sending end of year data. They actually have access to ongoing data. So when a student is in their 12th grade, we would actually have access to in progress coursework that the student is currently completing. So that makes that data set a very, very desirable data set to use for placement. Next would be the next verified source of data would be CalPass Plus. So when no CCGI data is available for students, we will work with the verified data that CalPass Plus has. And then finally, when no verified data is available, we do use the self-reported data that the student has provided inside of the application. There's a little bit of a use case that we're going to talk about here in a bit that'll also use a combination of the verified CalPass Plus data along with the self-reported data from CCC Apply in an attempt to arrive at the best possible placement that we can and the most accurate placement that we can for a student as well. But I'm going to cover that in a little bit. So once we've selected the best data source for use in the decision logic, we execute the statewide decision. We execute the decision logic, and we arrive at 2 different sets of placements. One is the recommended support for AB 705 for English and for math. And then we also use the statewide MMAP decision logic to provide higher level math recommendations as well for students who qualify. So what that looks like in in the data that's transmitted over to the colleges is that we have the 3 recommended level of support for transfer level English, transfer level statistics and liberal arts math, as well as for the transfer level STEM mathematics. And then in addition to that, for students who do qualify, as I stated, we are providing true false flags for students who are eligible to enroll in trigonometry, pre-calculus, or calculus as well. So those are the placements that are being generated. Once we have those placements generated, then we're ready to deliver that information to colleges. And this, again, we're doing this on an individual student basis in a near real-time fashion. The placement is delivered to colleges via one of two options that you locally can determine exactly what is going to be the best integration type for your college or district. And the two options are, one is a downloadable CSV file that we basically is enabled via a new download client, and Glue is writing to a shared folder, to a CSV file that's in a shared folder between your district and MMPS, or in a much more kind of tightly integrated, a little more, tightly coupled integration, we can actually write to staging tables within a college's SIS that's enabled via the Superglue college adapter. So those are the two options that are available for receiving the data from us. From there, the data is it's designed to basically integrate into local processes that you have in place to support AB 705, and with regards to integrating with potentially a guided self-placement process, or through some type of interface that you have with your students that collect some background information about the student, as well as understand their educational goals to help guide and direct them towards specific resources, as well as courses and coursework inside of the registration system as well. So what that looks like graphically is again, starting on CCC Apply, when a student submits an application, the multiple measures placement process kicks off. We go and attempt to gather up data that could be available for each student per the application. Once we've consolidated that down, we execute the decision logic to generate the recommended level of support and the higher level math placements. That data is then transmitted, and it's kind of treated like an extension of the CCC Apply data. However, it is delivered through a different mechanism than the application, than how you're currently receiving the application data. We're also writing all of this information out to the Chancellor's Office, to the data lake and data warehouse, so that we can facilitate and enable any type of statewide research and ongoing efforts to continuously evolve the decision logic, the models that are going to help us ensure that students are getting through the coursework as successfully as possible. I do see a question here in chat, or no? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. We do have Dan Lamry from ERP as well. From a technical requirements perspective, use of CCC Apply is required, since the submission of an application is what triggers all of our workflow. Additionally, opting into the self-reported high school transcript questions inside of CCC Apply has now been activated for all colleges who do use CCC Apply. So self-reported information for students who meet the qualifications for having those questions appear are going to have access. We're going to have access to that self-reported high school transcript information for all of those students. And as a reminder, those self-reported high school transcript questions appear in CCC Apply for students who have graduated or will graduate from a US-based high school, as well as for, and B, students who have graduated from high school within the past 10 years. If you've graduated outside of the US, or more than 10 years ago, those applicants are not presented with those self-reported questions. So use of the CCC apply is a hard requirement. Implementation of your selected SIS integration, again, either through the CSV file or through writing to the staging tables that are inside of the SIS. One of those options is required. And then again, basically processes that would take that information from those staging tables or from that CSV and then process that into your core tables to facilitate registration. Those are the technical requirements. Let's see, we've got a question here in chat. Eric would appreciate some future guidance on how the higher level rules work if college considers trig transfer level and not above. Okay, good question. John Hetz, do you have an answer to that question by any chance?
I guess the question really, I need some clarification from Eric, but the higher level rules basically work out so that the colleges will have the opportunity to use the placements into every level, starting at statistics and liberal arts math, going all the way up to calculus. Colleges will have the discretion of which of those they would like to use or not. The only other thing I think Eric might mean is he might be referring to how the upper level, the top level of the math sets of AB 705 recommendations work. And the way that those were designed, they were designed so that they are a relatively conservative rule set. It uses pre-calculus as the essentially target transfer level course. So if your initial transfer level course is below pre-calculus, say trigonometry or college algebra, which is the case at most colleges, then that rule set will operate as a relatively conservative rule set for placing students into pre-calculus or pre-calculus with support.
Good. Thanks, John.
Sure.
Okay. So let's run through some frequently asked questions that tend to come up, and before we open up the floor to other questions. So frequently asked questions. So how will students receive their placement recommendations from MMPS? So the current version of MMPS does not support delivery directly to students. Our future development efforts are going to enable functionality that will allow us to present the information to students via MyPath. And so I imagine that when we start looking at MMPS and AB 705, right? Some of the things that have changed have been the way that the assessment process works, right? And in a lot of situations, right, for a lot of colleges, assessment served as a touch point for the exchange of some information exchange of information with students that allowed us to understand a little bit more about their background, right? Understand where their potential English skills and their English, whether they're a native English speaker or they're an English language learner, could be part of their background information that we would have obtained from the assessment touch point, as well as understanding their ed goals and their career goals to understand exactly which direction from a math perspective we want to guide and direct students. So I know that a lot of the folks that I've visited with throughout the system, a lot of colleges and districts are locally developing a survey or a tool that will kind of replace that touch point at assessment and facilitate that exchange of information to help us help understand the student's background and their goals and point them towards more specific courses from a registrations perspective that lines up exactly to to their background and to their goals. So I'm hoping that we're able to replicate and facilitate that type of a user experience inside of MyPath that again would facilitate some of the exchange of information that is necessary to make sure that we're pointing the students to the correct resources that are their local resources and registration information so that students know exactly where to go. So that's future development for our project that we are working Let's see here. Next question. I'm looking at questions in chat here. Will MMPS work with our special admit students, 9th and 10th grade students? A new memo from the Chancellor's Office came out on this last week regarding MMAP. So as of right now, we are looking at students who have completed. We have completed 11th grade transcript data is what the directive that we had from in our development efforts, and so we haven't addressed anything that has come out in the memo from the Chancellor's Office from a development effort as of yet. We're still analyzing all of that to understand exactly what we need to do from that perspective. And is MMPS available now in CCC Apply, and what CCC Apply version? So MMPS is separate from CCC Apply. We have a hard dependency on CCC Apply, but it's not directly integrated with CCC Apply. It's a separate data set that's delivered via an alternate mechanism from the data that you would receive once a student submits an application on CCC Apply for your college. Okay. Moving on here with these frequently asked questions, what is self-reported data would result in a more accurate recommendation? So this has been a pretty common question that we've received. A lot of verified transcript data that's available. For instance, all the CalPass Plus data. I believe all the CalPass Plus data, if not the majority of it, is end of year data that is provided by the high school or districts to CalPass. And as a result, when a student completes their 11th grade and again has they're still in 12th grade, there is some new information that's not part of that. But we could see where the student in their self-reported information is reporting that they've completed a higher level of math and English courses or a different GPA than what we have on the verified transcript data. And so we are in the situation where we have both CalPass Plus data for a student as well as self-reported data that the student provided on the application. We're actually analyzing those two data sets together to make the most accurate recommendation from a support level as well as a placement level that we possibly can based on the combination of those two. Information about how this is, how that actually works is available in our implementation guide that we'll make sure that we distribute and give access to everybody following or at the end of this. I'll post a link to our public documentation in chat to give everybody access to that. No, that's not it. Can we customize, next question, can we customize the decision logic to locally defined thresholds? So I know we certainly know that there are campuses, and it tends to vary between math and English faculty, whether or not they're wanting to adopt the statewide thresholds to determine the appropriate level of support for students. As of right now, MMPS aligns to those statewide thresholds for determining recommended level of support, as well as lining up to the statewide MMAP logic for determining higher level math placement. And so support for a local customization of those thresholds is not part of our current offering. There are a couple of things with regards to that. So one is with the data that we have available and the transmission and what we're transmitting and providing to the colleges, the data dictionary includes not only the recommended level of support and the higher level math placements, you'll also be receiving the input, the data elements that were used as input into the decision logic to determine the recommended level of support and placements for the statewide level. So if you're tweaking or customizing your local decision logic, you would be able to take the inputs that we are providing that could potentially be a highly reliable verified transcript source and use those data elements through your local processes to determine local placement as well. But as of right now, MMPS does not support kind of tweaking or changing the thresholds for determining support, recommended level support. For students, how do we place students for whom we do not have any data, right? So there are going to be students we have international students, we have students who may have graduated more than 10 years ago. For whatever reason, we just don't have either access to any verified transcript data or self-reported data for that student. In that case, we'll be notifying each college for every student, for every attempt that we were unable to provide placement. We will be transmitting a record to your college saying, we attempted to, this student submitted an application on CCC Apply. We attempted to generate placement, but we came up empty-handed from a data source perspective. And so because of that, we're unable to generate placement. So you'll be notified of that use case. Students who do not receive a placement recommendation from MMPS should be placed using a locally developed self-guided placement process. And I believe that the memo, either the last memo that came out from the Chancellor's Office, or there's a forthcoming memo from the Chancellor's Office that outlines some guidelines for a guided self-placement process. John Heads, can you confirm whether that information has been distributed out to colleges yet?
Information on the self-guided placement just came out, I think last week sometime.
Last week, right, okay. So that information is available, and that memo has been distributed already. Does MMPS support guided self-placement? So as of right now, our current version, we don't have functionality to assist students in a guided self-placement. That's another one of those opportunities that we would have inside of MyPath that we would foresee being functionality that we could implement inside of MyPath and allow for colleges to recreate or to create a guided self-placement process inside of MyPath. But as of right now, that's not part of our current offering. And then what data will my college receive from MMPS? So again, as I said, in addition to identifying information, the CCC ID is the primary identifier for the student. You'll be receiving the recommended level of support for English and for the AB 705 English and math, as well as for the higher level math placements for trigonometry, pre-calc, and calc. So in addition to that information, you'll also be receiving, when we have available, true-false flags for whether or not the student has completed Algebra 1 or Algebra 2. You'll also be receiving, again, all of the data input. So you'll be receiving GPA, highest English, highest math, and the respective grades that the student received in those respective courses, as well as some timestamp information. So when things were processed, when you received it, and that type of information. And there's again, in the implementation guide that I'm going to get and post into the chat here, the implementation guide includes the full data dictionary of all of the elements that are available in the records and the information that's transmitted over. So from a next steps perspective, let's just see here. I'm going to jump over here to questions, and then we'll come back and circle back to next steps. Let's see. I've got some questions here in chat. Okay, how far does CalPass and CDE data go back? John, do you want to take that question?
So we don't have the CDE data overall yet. That's still forthcoming. CalPass goes back to about 2008, and it has coverage pretty substantially back to 2011. The coverage varies by district. It's a voluntary intersegmental data system, educational data system. So we have probably a substantial majority of the students that are enrolling, but it won't go back 10, 15 years.
Okay. And John, we've got you on there. Maybe Dan, I need to answer this, but the question from Charlie is, how does this compare with the AB 705 data set that's available from your AB 705 endpoint?
Dan already covered that. So it's pretty much the same endpoint that colleges already have. The primary difference, I think, and Dan can correct this, is whether or not there is CCGI data available. So the current endpoint that we have for CalPass just hits CalPass data.
Correct. And does that incorporate self-reported data as well, John, or no?
I do not think so. Dan?
Okay.
Yeah, so to Charlie's question, they're the same endpoints. The AB705 calpassplus.org API placement endpoint is the same one that CCC Apply uses. There's a different endpoint that's map specific that was created years ago. So those two are different. I just wanted to make that clear, but that is at a different endpoint.
Okay. Next question from Felipe. Will the platform be available to retrieve updated placement or for currently enrolled students, or is this only available for new incoming students? So that is that's a great question. And that is something that we're currently investigating on the development team side to figure out if there's a way and what we would need in order to be able to facilitate providing recommended support for students who are already enrolled. So that is not something that's currently part of that, but we're trying to we're working to figure out how to make that happen. Also, you know, kind of along those lines, we've had other colleges that have asked about what if we want to verify the placements and the recommended level of support if they've potentially changed, right? So if when a student applied, they could have been, it could be months before they're actually getting ready to register. And if we wanted to verify if anything has changed from a transcript perspective, that would represent a material change in the recommended level of support or the placements if we could get updated information. So enabling some other triggers is something that we see as part of our future roadmap, but we're just not exactly sure when that is going to be available. How will colleges be notified? So colleges are notified via when we actually write out to the staging tables, and that's happening in a pretty near real time. Within minutes after the student has submitted the application, that those records will be written out to either the CSV or to your staging table, depending on how your college is integrated with MMPS. Summer is asking, will it be clear which data sources were used to determine this placement? Good question. Thank you. So that was one thing that I missed on uncovering the data dictionary. So we do identify the data sources that were used for determining placement. It's in our data dictionary, but just to go over, data source 1 means that the placement was based on CCGI data. Data source 2 means that it was based solely on CalPass Plus data. Data source 3 is the placement was based solely on self-reported data. And then data source 4 is means that both CalPass Plus data and self-reported data was available for that student, and the placement reflects analysis of both of those data sets for arriving at placement. Next question here. CalPass Plus K12 district implementation. Can we get support for helping districts upload into CalPass?
Yeah, that's actually something that we have a team of folks that are ready and available to kind of help with. It's actually very, very easy now compared to what it was. Districts, all they need to do is actually take their existing CalPads, PADS file, and basically drag and drop it into our system. So it's very, very straightforward for any districts, any K-12 districts who are partnering with colleges that want to get that data into CalPass. It's something that can happen very, very quickly now. So if you have a district you're working with, you'd like to get them started, you can email me and I'll get you hooked up with our team that can help with that.
Okay. And let's see, we have a question here, and it looks like I think Dan may be answering some of this question, but since different high schools offer a wide variety of courses under different names, etc. Can we talk about how different high school courses, in particular math, are crosswalked to appropriate placement levels? For example, some high schools may have Algebra 2, but the content of that Algebra 2 might really be how the state defines as Algebra 1.
So I'll go ahead and start with that, and then Dan can fill in anything that I miss. So generally speaking, there are codes that the K-12 districts are responsible for aligning it to content. So and we use those codes as the primary method for understanding the content that those courses have. So it's pretty unlikely that they'd call something Algebra 2 that's actually the content of Algebra 1. But if they were doing such a thing, Algebra 2 would have an Algebra 1 kind of code with it under those cases. They wouldn't be able to code it separately. So there's a fair amount of work that happens at the district level. We also do a fair amount of work looking at the different content that, or the different kind of content of the names of the courses and the sequence of the courses to make sure that we have that right in CalPass. It's a little bit more challenging, obviously, for students who are self-reporting their high school courses, as they may not have the same level of facility with the different naming kind of conventions, and so they may misname the course when they put it into self-report. But as it regards data that's in CalPass, we work pretty hard to make sure that it's represents the content that's typically associated with that course. Obviously, none of that is ever perfect, but we work very hard to make sure it's lined up as well as possible.
John, does that kind of line up to how we arrived at the list of high school math courses that show up in CCC Apply?
It does. So one of the things we tried to do was look across all the various courses and their naming structure to try and help guide students to more appropriate choices there. It's a real challenge, obviously. How courses are named can be very confusing to students. And so you might be in a course that's called Algebra B. And to you as a student, that may seem like the second algebra course that you've taken, and it might be. But typically an Algebra B course is going to be something that's actually a second half of a normal algebra course that's been stretched out into 2 years. But that's still coded correctly in the system, typically as an Algebra 1 level content course. The student may get it confused, but the system does a better job of tracking those types of things. Again, not perfectly, but reasonably well.
Okay. Thank you. Let's see, next question. Are there plans to integrate this data into MIS data at some point? So I know that there are kind of multiple initiatives that are going across the system of trying to consolidate and get all various repositories of data into the Chancellor's Office data lake and make that facilitate any kind of ongoing statewide research that would need to be done. I believe that incorporating MIS data into that larger statewide repository for the Chancellor's Office is one of the goals that they're working on. I don't know a timeline for when that's going to be executed. I have not received I've not heard an update on that project as of late, but I will make sure that I'll ask that. I'll ask the product manager about that and find out what current plans are for integrating MIS data as well. Okay, that looks as though we've kind of covered all the questions that are there in chat. How can we gain access to the Chancellor's Office data warehouse? That access is controlled by the Chancellor's Office themselves. So I don't know exactly how getting access to their data warehouse works. But there's definitely data governance. There's obviously data governance that dictates, what data elements can be accessed, who can access that information, accessing who has access to information for a specific college versus, or a specific college district versus statewide level of data. So those types of things are determined at a different level than where I'm working at as of right now. Is there a test college that has been placing students with MMPS? We've been doing piloting. So our pilot colleges have been executing, submitting applications for various types of test personas of students that would result in, placements coming from CCGI, placements coming from CalPass Plus, placements coming from self-reported, or a combination of that. So we've been piloting this in a non-production environment for the last couple of months, and working through those and analyzing the pilot results. Things look as though they're substantially working exactly the way that we expect. And a lot of the issues most of the issues that we've ran into have actually been data setup issues, just given the number of partners that we have and needing to sync data between CCGI and CalPass Plus and CDE and CCC Apply. Getting all of that data synced up has been a little bit of a challenge, you can all imagine. But once we've had those data setup issues corrected, the system has been working exactly the way that we've expected it to. So that's how we've been testing this out with a test college that we've actually been using. Our pilot colleges. Our pilot colleges have been Monterey Peninsula, Sierra, and College of the Redwoods so far. And I believe that we have a college within the LACCD who is going to be coming on as a PeopleSoft piloting college as well. So to talk a little bit about next steps, you can contact me. I'm sorry, I probably should have updated this to a different email address. I believe it's CRMS at CCC Tech Center is the email address that should be used to reach out. And Sandoval just posted that into chat. So each one of your colleges, whether you may or may not have had any kind of interaction with your CRM, has an appointed college relationship manager that is there to facilitate answering questions, helping you assess your local needs, and understanding exactly what solutions are lined up to fit the specific needs that are at your college and district. And again, based on which SIS you have in place and other factors that determine exactly how they consult and serve as a resource to your college to help engage with technologies that are provided by the tech center. And so reaching out to those folks, they'll serve as a primary point of contact in making sure that we have we have all the right stakeholders from both your college as well as from the tech center attending a meeting that would talk about the technical integration. Once we've assessed and kind of arrived at a determination of what type of integration your college would be using, from there we would talk about what level of piloting efforts you'd want to do locally before we start moving things over and actually using the real data on production. So we will basically, so reaching out to your CRMs is going to be the first point of contact. So using that email address that Sandoval provided. I will say one of the other kind of frequently asked questions is, are we required to use MMPS? And the response to that question is sound a little ambiguous. From the Chancellor's Office's perspective, they're expecting that every college is going to be receiving data from MMPS, kind of, again, as a mindset, as it's an extension of the data that the colleges are already receiving from CCC Apply, delivered via a different mechanism. How you use that data locally is up to your determination, but this is going to be, but it is going to be something that the Chancellor's Office is expecting every college to receive. So that may be something that might be a little bit of a news to you. If you have any questions or concerns about that, please feel free to reach out to your CRM, or you can email me at the email address that's on your screen as well, and we'll help try and work through whatever that is that we need to work through to get to a place where y'all feel comfortable and understand exactly what needs to be done. So once we identified the stakeholders and we have all of the team ready to go, ready to meet, next step again is going to be to have a technical conversation about how to integrate with MMPS. If your college already has superglue in place, that means that the implementation timeline is relatively is going to be abbreviated, because you've already completed kind of the heavy lifting in terms of enabling that infrastructure to facilitate the communication. If your college hasn't adopted superglue yet, then we'll talk about the implementation process of what superglue looks like. And if your college determines that you don't want to use superglue at all, for one reason or another, then we would talk about the implementation process for enabling the integration using that shared file and the downloadable CSV file type of an integration. So it's pretty, I would say, inside of those three options, we're probably talking anywhere from a couple of days up to 2 to 4 weeks, depending on kind of resourcing and prioritization of other projects that are going on, primarily within your local IT team, to determine exactly when and how that will work. So those are next steps. John Hetz did just point out that there is an upcoming AB 705 workshop. So that one covers a broad range of topics, talking about how campuses who have already started implementing AB 705, the successes, some of the challenges, some of the metrics that prove that things are going to be working the way that we're hoping and expecting. And it's been a great way. It's been a great place for colleges to network, see what other colleges are doing, and as well, share what you're doing locally, and as well as learn from other folks and from other campuses is what they're doing. The link for registration is there. And then there is another one that is on May 3rd at Mesa College down towards San Diego. So 2 more of those are available. If you're in the area, I'd highly recommend registering and attending. It's just really been a very informative way to, it's been an informative way to learn what other colleges are doing, share what you're doing, and of course, there's always an element of commiseration about all the work that it takes to get there. So highly recommend that everybody attends. That is kind of the information that I wanted to cover today. Are there any other questions that folks have before we wrap things up here?
Thank you, John. I appreciate all the information. Let's look. I want to make sure that you were able to answer Rick Luna's question. How soon do you anticipate that transcript data will be available through the CDE?
Okay. Good question. We're still in the early processes of analyzing the MOU and understanding what can and cannot be shared and how it can be shared. And we're needing, from there, we go into kind of a round of design with all of the partners that are engaged so far, as well as with CDE. So I don't have an exact time frame as to when that data would be available. I'm hoping that sometime within the first quarter of the new fiscal year that we would have that integration completed. So sometime September timeframe when we go there. I will make the Sandoval. Is it possible to distribute the
Yeah, John, thanks. I'm answering that in chat right now. We're going to post the PowerPoint and the webinar recording to the ccctechcenter.org website. We'll when that is available, we'll send an additional message to the same group that received this original invite, just to notify everyone that it's there and available.
Excellent, excellent, excellent.
And then, did you see the question about my path there?
Yeah, I saw the question from Greg. So Greg, we're working on a timeline that more than likely is going to have that, I would imagine, by the second quarter of the next fiscal year. So I'm hoping that towards somewhere in between between September and November is when I'm hoping that that functionality is going to be enabled. We're still kind of gathering requirements around what that needs to look like. And so that's part of the reason for the delay with that one. Awesome. Okay, so I think that's it for everything. Really appreciate your attending, and I hope to see you all around. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Okay.
Thank you, John, and thanks everyone for attending. Much appreciated. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.